Real leaders leave a legacy. They capture the hearts and minds of their teams. Their origin story puts the safety and well-being of their people first. Great companies ubiquitously have safe yet productive operations. For those companies, safety is an investment, not a cost for the C-suite. It's a real topic of daily focus. This is The Safety Guru with your host, Eric Michrowski, a globally recognized ops and safety guru, public speaker, and author. Are you ready to leave a safety legacy? Your legacy success story begins now.
Hi, and welcome to The Safety Guru. My name is Eric Michrowski, and today I'm very excited to have with me Kathleen Dobson, who's a safety director with Alberici. She's here to talk to us a little bit about suicide prevention and awareness in the construction industry. Kathleen, welcome to the show. Really happy to have you part of the conversations.
Oh, thank you so much, Eric. It's my pleasure to be here.
Kathleen, to start out, if you can share a little bit about your journey and how you got into safety and really you're passionate about the topic we're going to talk about today on suicide prevention.
Absolutely, thanks. I started out as a hospital-based registered nurse. And after about 15 years in the hospital, I ended up working for a manufacturer as their occupational health and safety nurse. And some of the roles that the nurse had were not very traditional. For example, I was responsible for managing confined spaces, and I was responsible for conducting aerial lift training and fork truck training, things that I really didn't have experience in. And so I educated myself, got some training, and as I was developing my training programs, I was asked to participate in safety audits. Again, something that I wasn't really familiar with, but I really enjoyed. And when that position ended because the company downsized and so on, I found myself with several different experiences: hospital-based nursing, manufacturing, a little bit of safety, a little bit of training. And I was fortunate enough to find a job with Alberici Constructors, who recognized that I understood behavior-based safety and some components of construction. So that's kind of how I got to where I'm at now. Back 20 years ago. And really my passion for suicide prevention, I've had several friends and relatives who have committed suicide. One was a registered nurse colleague of mine. She was probably one of the first people that I knew that had taken her own life. My husband's cousin, my own cousin. And so I think it shows that almost anybody can be affected by suicide. And about 5 years ago, I heard a presentation from a group called the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. And I said, wow, that sounds great. And I found that one of the organizations that I belong to, NAWIC, which is the National Association of Women in Construction, as well as TALK, the Association of Union Constructors, were both involved pretty heavily in this process. And when I went to NAWIC to ask them how active and how involved we were, they said, not very. They were lending their name more than anything else. And I said, well, we need to do more because this is a real crisis in the industry. People are dying every single day, much more so than falls and electrocution and being struck by vehicles on the highway. But we don't talk about it and we don't recognize it. So both TALK and NAWIC have put together position statements, and since they've been doing that, I've been advocating for mental health awareness and suicide prevention.
That's phenomenal. And can you share maybe a little bit about why it's so important in the construction industry? So some of the elements that make it perhaps more prone to suicide and the risk associated with it?
Oh, sure. Well, construction for many, many years is really an institution with a pretty narrow view of who belongs. So gender, race, religion, ethnicity are all concerns. And if you were in the building trades and your family was not part of the generations of workers, you're really an outsider until it's proven otherwise. And so people who are outsiders obviously are not included in the day-to-day companionship, relationship, the camaraderie, the community that the construction industry offers. And if they have issues, and honestly, there's probably 40 or 50% of people in the United States who at one time or another have some sort of a diagnosable mental illness. Whether it's, it could be depression that's temporary, or could be depression
Right.
that's long-term and overwhelming. But the construction industry has been made up of very stoic men mostly, and the industry is recognized for high hazards and taking risks and being the tough guys. If you're injured, you just kind of suck it up and you go on with your business. And so those are just some of the reasons why construction gets impacted, because we don't share our feelings. We are taught really to not suffer. You suffer in silence, and that just that overall attitude, nothing can happen to me, and we've got this real sort of macho image
Right.
about the industry.
These are traits that are in quite a few other industries as well. There's no doubt that all of this also has an impact in terms of overall health and safety, because if I'm not well in some way, shape, or form, I'm not going to show up with potential on the job, and other things can also happen which can impact myself and also my peers. Can you show me maybe a little bit more about why businesses need to do more? I often have heard in the past, which I think is completely wrong, that business shouldn't start dealing with mental health themes and issues. Tell me more about how you remove the stigma and why it's so critical for businesses to drive change around suicide and suicide prevention.
Well, I think you mentioned a word that I don't like using, and that is stigma, because stigma places a negative impact on the individual. If you're stigmatized, you are often negatively looked at within
Sure.
your group, and we really shouldn't put blame on people because they are depressed or they're in pain, or or they may have another issue that has caused them to suffer with their mental health.
Right.
And I think it's important that we talk about it. Another situation that has happened in the industry is that we brought on board and recruited many, many, many people who have transitioned out of the armed services. And a lot of those individuals, especially if they have seen action in a war zone or some sort of a conflict, they suffer from post-traumatic stress. And so the triggers on the job site, loud noises, shouting, can trigger a stress reaction. If we talk about
True.
it, if we talk about it, it becomes very commonplace. And I can't take credit for this, but one of my colleagues said, if we can talk about prostate problems and psoriasis, we can talk about mental health and suicide prevention. And
Right.
I think that, you know, as we see from years ago, no one ever said the word cancer. And because there was that view that, oh, you know, there was something bad about that. And so once we started to recognize there's nothing bad about it, we can help people who have cancer. We can help them transition through the different phases of the illness, even if it is deadly to them. They need our support. They don't need to be isolated and ostracized. And I think that our individuals who are having mental health crises should also be treated the same way. They should not be isolated. They should not be ostracized. And it takes an individual who has a keen eye and ear for listening to their fellow workers and hearing them talk about situations, their families, what's going on in their lives, and as well as, you know, that sort of inflection that they're hearing, how they're doing their work. And if we can educate our frontline supervisors to make them more aware of what to look for, patterns to look for, if people are kind of going down that path towards suicide, I think we're going to save a lot of lives.
Yeah, I think it's so important. It's part. The work environment is a huge part of each person's life, and the more people are aware of signs, the more they're prepared to address themes, issues, have conversations, the more positive impact we can have overall. So I think this is incredibly important what you're doing in that space, and really trying to create more awareness around it for businesses. So on that topic, what can businesses do to drive real impact around this?
Well, you know, we talk about having employee assistance programs, and I think that they're great. However, most employee assistance programs are designed to assist people in a traditional work setting, in an office setting, I believe. I don't think they're often equipped to manage field workers because they don't understand what the field worker is going through. They don't understand the aches and pains that they have at the end of every single day, and how those aches and pains then can transition into another trigger, which is overuse of prescription medications and addiction to those prescription medications. So I think that having an employee assistance program is great. I think that the people involved with those employee assistance programs need to get out onto job sites to see how workers are and how the work is done. Because nobody's going to call an employee assistance program if they don't trust that their conversations are kept confidential, and 100%. that there's no way for it to get back to the human resource department. Because are they going to put a little check mark beside my name or a little asterisk when it says, Kathi made a phone call to the EAP and she's concerned with her finances, or she's concerned with her marital status, or she's concerned about the addiction that she has. So having an EAP program, I think getting families involved just by sending home material. It doesn't have to be real focused. It can just say something like, "Are you okay?" And if you have a problem, here's a number to call, or here's a person to talk to.
Right.
I've seen job fairs, or where people bring in their families to celebrate a project, and there's some vendors there. They have some giveaways, they have some games for children, and occasionally you'll see a table set up. Nobody behind the table, just pamphlets and information about substance abuse and alcohol abuse and mental health awareness and suicide prevention. Those tables get cleared out. All the information gets taken, and
Wow.
taken by a family member, or it gets taken by the individual themselves, because they don't have to directly say anything to anybody. Again, having the supervisor trained and aware so that they can be what we call a gatekeeper from the field to a helping environment, to the suicide lifeline number, to say, hey, how are you doing? And
Right.
and continue to probe, because when somebody typically asks you how you're doing, you're like, oh yeah, I'm okay. But if that person says, you know what, you just don't seem like yourself, you seem as though you've got something weighing on your shoulders, do you want to talk about it? And sometimes then it gives people
Right.
the opportunity to open up at that point.
Really important. And I know when we've talked about on the EP side before, there's some organizations I've seen where the EP has gone to a next level, where they also have peers that are part of the organization that were previously frontline workers or still frontline workers who take part in it. So that seems to address your point around people that understand the work environment. So with some skills around it, I think the theme around the supervisor awareness and understanding is so critical, because that's the person that's going to interact the most with a team member, and they have a chance to check in. I know in Australia they had an annual campaign that's "Are You Okay?" and it's really around helping broach the topic, the conversation, and speaking about it in all organizations on a regular basis around the importance of mental health, mental well-being, but also in terms of suicide prevention.
Absolutely agree. And I think that by asking somebody, do you feel suicidal? They're not going to go out and commit suicide. They're going to recognize that as a helpline that they could utilize. One thing that I wanted to point out about having frontline supervisors being those individuals who can really make a difference. I read an article over the weekend. A gentleman by the name of Calvin Byers. He's really a thought leader. He's really been on the forefront of addressing suicide prevention in the construction industry and mental health awareness. He said, nowadays we have to focus in on people's eyes, because we can't see expression any other way. And sometimes you can see in people's eyes the sadness that's there when they are suffering with an issue.
Right. Wow, that's a really, really important point. Anything in terms of really connecting, but that means you've got to be comfortable making that eye contact, having the conversation, be looking for potentially signs of challenges that may be happening.
Exactly. And, as I said, our supervisors are not always, they're not always the most people persons on the job site. A lot of times they're the people there to get things done. They're not the people that are on site to kind of coach and guide and, give the old hugs and tell them that you're doing okay, you're doing great.
Exactly. And I know just a couple of days ago, there was World Mental Health Awareness Day. And I was looking into it just before our conversation, and I found a staggering statistic from the CDC that just talks about the relevance, the importance of this. They said that this was done just over the summer. They said 1 in 10 Americans had considered suicide the previous month, about twice as many as in 2018. So the problem, obviously, with social distancing and the pandemic, likely pointing to this increase. But the other element is young adults, 8 to 24. The proportion was astonishing. It was 1 in 4. So just really such a critical theme now, and in construction, but in so many other industries, are really in the space of health and safety.
Yeah, when you talk about the 1 in 10 and how that number has really increased, I think that, because we have been so isolated and in our own homes and away from our community and our people that have always given us comfort. If you had problems at home before, they're probably not going to be any better because you're there all the time.
Exactly.
And when you address the children, that number 1 in 4, that's frightening.
It is.
And I think that really looks at the issues that surround the culture that the children are in, the intimidation, the harassment, the bullying that child gets, that really becomes a psychological, that really has a psychological impact on them. As adults, sometimes we can deal with that, but when you're a child, you have no idea how to deal with somebody who is always putting you down because of your height, your weight, your inability to do sports, because you're a nerd, whatever the case may be. I mean, there are hundreds of different reasons why children are ostracized or picked upon, and children don't know how to deal with it.
That leads really well to kind of next theme I'd love to explore with you is really what can you do about this? So you've talked about what organizations can do, but what can an individual who listens to this, who has awareness, what is it that you can do to make a difference ultimately in people's lives?
One of the first things that I would recommend is for people to download the lifelines for suicide prevention on their phones and in their messaging. So that if you come across somebody, you can readily say, hey, do we need to call this number? Do you need some assistance with just finding some support? And
right.
And if we can advocate for people, I think that's really, really important. The Suicide Lifeline number, by the way, is 800-273-8255. And the Lifeline number is 741-741.
Phenomenal resources to have at your fingertips. If ever you come into a situation where you've got to have a conversation, do something about it. So thank you for sharing that. And any other suggestions for people in terms of a difference they can make, either in terms of if you know somebody that might be contemplating, or you're not sure how to broach the conversation, or even if you want your organization that you're part of to start really embracing that something needs to happen?
I think really just opening up the conversation is the first real key step in all of that. And just being able to ask that first question, are you okay?
Right.
There's many ways that an individual can help and support, by just by being an advocate. If you're on the job site, find and download some posters, some suicide prevention posters. Ask your company to offer workplace mental health screenings. Get the EAP involved or community mental health professionals in so that they understand and know the workplace and the culture of the company. And I think it's important also for us to recognize that if somebody has a mental health issue, when they come back to work, neither they nor their problems should be ignored. You should be able to talk to them and say, hey, welcome back. We're glad to have you back. But if you continue to have an issue, I'm here to help you. Thanks for trusting in me. I'm on your side.
That's really important. I thank you for everything you've done in terms of creating awareness around this, in terms of helping organizations start embracing in terms of the role and how they can make a difference. I really appreciate you coming on the show to speak more about this so critical topic around suicide awareness and prevention. So thank you so much, Kathleen.
Oh, sure thing. And just one more reminder, everybody take that checkup from the neck up.
Like what we do? Share this on your socials and tell everyone. Thank you for listening to the Safety Guru on C-Suite Radio. Leave a legacy, distinguish yourself from the pack, grow your success, capture the hearts and minds of your teams, fuel your future. Come back in 2 weeks for the next episode or listen to our sister show with the Ops Guru, Michrowski.